Ethan Cole had been a trucker for nearly 3 decades. In his worn leather seat, behind the wheel of a massive red Kenworth W900, he had seen every kind of road the American landscape had to offer, from the frozen hell of North Dakota to the humid chaos of Louisiana. Nothing shook him anymore, or so he thought. It was supposed to be an easy run, his final trip before retirement. A simple overnight haul of industrial supplies from Boulder, Colorado to a storage depot near the Oregon border. The route would take him through some mountain passes, but nothing he hadn't handled before. In fact, it was so routine, he didn't even tell his daughter he was going out again. "Last ride," he'd said over dinner. "I'll be home for good tomorrow morning." He never came home. The trouble started when he entered the Ravenmoor Pass around midnight. It wasn't a place he was overly familiar with, just a narrow stretch of road slicing through a series of winding mountain ridges in northern Utah. Recently, the Department of Transportation had begun a night construction project there, installing a new reinforced tunnel system beneath the ridge. That night, the workers had wrapped early due to equipment issues, leaving the detour signs and safety barriers in place. But one detail had been missed. The reflective warning board indicating a sharp right detour had been partially covered by a tarp blown loose in the wind. Ethan, alone in his cab with the AM radio humming low and fog creeping in around his high beams, didn't see it. He kept driving straight. And then he vanished. At 6:12 a.m., dispatch received a ping from the rig's GPS module showing the truck at a standstill just beyond the pass. When they tried calling Ethan, there was no answer. By 6:45 a.m., the tracking signal was gone. The State Patrol responded first, followed by a search and rescue team. When they arrived at the site, they found something that made the hairs on their necks stand up. Tire tracks, very clear, very fresh, led off the edge of the road where the mountain sloped down into a steep ravine. But there was no debris, no broken guardrail, no signs of a crash, just the twin lines of rubber, stretching over the gravel and stopping suddenly at the edge. One deputy leaned over cautiously and shone a flashlight down. The ravine was dense with mist, even in daylight. They heard no birds, no water, no movement, as if the world had hit a pause button. Then, the radios went out. The construction company was contacted. They admitted the possibility that the detour sign had not been re-secured after the windstorm earlier that evening. A foreman named Mike Grady arrived on site and confirmed that the detour should have diverted traffic sharply to the right onto a newly paved access path leading around the construction pit. Without the sign, the route would appear to continue straight, right over a patch of soft gravel and toward open air. But still, where was the truck? Helicopters were called in, drones, thermal imaging. For 24 hours they scoured the area. Nothing, not even a glint of metal beneath the trees. It was as though the earth had opened and swallowed the Kenworth whole. But that wasn't the strangest part. Searchers reported strange sensory anomalies near the cliff's edge. The air felt thick, charged. One crewman claimed his watch began ticking backwards for a full minute before resetting itself. Another said he heard a woman's voice humming in the fog, soft and mournful, though no one else around him did. Everyone agreed on one thing: the silence in that ravine wasn't natural. Ethan Cole's daughter Lauren arrived the next day. She brought his favorite cap and a worn photograph of their family at Yellowstone. She refused to believe he was gone. "My father would never just drive off a cliff. Not in a million years. He was meticulous. He checked every mile." She spoke firmly, eyes hard with the kind of determination that made seasoned investigators pause. They let her see the site. Standing at the very edge where the tire marks ended, Lauren stared into the foggy abyss. She said she felt cold all of a sudden, despite the sun. Then, she noticed something no one else had, the faint imprint of a hand in the dirt. Small, delicate. Definitely not Ethan's. That night, a highway patrol officer named Rivera stayed back late, documenting the site with a drone. At 2:17 a.m., while reviewing footage live, the drone camera picked up a flicker of motion, a white shape, drifting across the road. He replayed the footage 3 times. On the 4th, the shape stopped and turned. It was the silhouette of a woman. Rivera fell asleep at his desk, and when he woke the next morning, the footage had been erased. 3 days passed. No truck. No Ethan. The case was marked as unexplained. But Lauren wasn't done. She hired an independent search party, including a veteran climber named Amos Briggs and a retired Navy sonar technician. They descended deeper into the ravine than the official teams had dared. At precisely 3:03 p.m. on the 5th day, Amos radioed in. "I've found something," he said. You won't believe this." And then, the radio cut. 3 days after Ethan Cole disappeared, Ravenmoor Pass became the most tightly sealed crime scene in Mineral County, Washington. The search and rescue teams worked around the clock, sweeping every inch of the hillsides, ravines, and underbrush, but found no trace. The only clear evidence was 2 tire tracks, sharply imprinted, stretching all the way to the edge of a cliff, then abruptly stopping, as if the massive truck had suddenly vanished. They brought in search dogs, drones, and even hired a professional rescue crew from the city. But all they found was the eerie silence of the forest. "No sign of a free-fall," Deputy Sheriff Will Tanner muttered in a meeting. "No debris, no oil, no sound. If the truck had fallen, there should be something, right?" And then everything seemed to hit a dead end, until the 7th day. Bill Harper was a veteran forest ranger who had lived near the slopes around Ravenmoor for nearly 30 years. To him, the forest held memories, emotions, and sometimes things that defied explanation. That early morning, Bill left the ranger station carrying a pistol, a radio, and an old thermos of coffee. He didn't believe Ethan had simply disappeared. Instead, he trusted the truck had taken a different path. Not the concrete road turn, but the turn of fate. A strong instinct pulled him back to an old, abandoned trail from the 1980s, a path cutting through the dense forest to the southwest, linking to a deep ravine where there once was a quarry site. The trail had been closed long ago due to landslides, but to someone like Bill, it had never truly disappeared. Near noon, as he followed the mossy, damp trail, he suddenly stopped. Beneath the dry leaves and mud, something was off. He bent down, brushing away the mud, and his heart clenched. Fresh and unmistakable tire tracks. Very fresh. He followed the tracks, around bends, even over stretches no truck should pass. Yet the tire marks continued, finally leading him to a site he would never forget. Nestled between 2 giant moss-covered boulders was a deep red container. It was neither overturned nor dented. It just lay there, as if placed gently by an invisible hand into a narrow rock crevice that no SUV could fit through. Harper held his breath. He approached cautiously. The forest was utterly silent except for the wind rustling through the trees. The front of the truck was covered in mud, but he could just make out the faded logo on the container. Definitely Ethan's truck. The cabin was locked tight. Harper tried the door. It didn't budge. No body, no blood, no sign of collision. Then he saw something that made his hair stand on end. The digital clock on the dashboard was still running. 12:14 p.m. Exact real time, ticking by the second. The engine was off, no sound whatsoever. But the clock glowed on, battery fully charged. After 7 days lost in the forest, with no connection and no power source, that was impossible. Harper stepped back, radioing in. "Ranger Station, this is Harper. I found the truck. Repeat, I found the truck, but something is very wrong. Very wrong." When the investigation team arrived, they immediately cordoned off the area. Police, federal agents, forensic specialists, all baffled by the truck's impossible location. How could a container weighing tens of tons have pushed through dense forest, past trees and boulders, then been placed in a rock crevice with no access? They had to use cutters to open the cabin. Inside was spotless. No sign of Ethan, no foreign fingerprints, no blood, no scratch marks. Yet the digital clock kept running, and the battery was full. The GPS device was empty, no journey data at all, as if the truck had never moved. "Are you sure this isn't a staged scene?" an agent asked Harper. "Try driving a 40-ton truck through the forest without breaking a single branch, then talk to me," he replied. One more chilling detail. The radio on the dashboard was still on, silent, but the indicator lights blinked as if trying to connect. Technicians found it was attempting to tune into a frequency that no longer existed, a channel discontinued since 1999. 3 nights after the truck was found, Harper dreamed of Ethan. In the dream, he stood on the edge of the cliff at Ravenmoor Pass. Thick fog enveloped everything, and from the distance came the sound of a truck engine. Then Ethan appeared through the mist, his face pale, eyes wide with shock. "Don't look for me anymore," Ethan whispered. "I took a different road, one not meant for the living." Harper woke up drenched in cold sweat. He never spoke of that dream again, but from that day on, he refused to return to the area where the truck was found. He even declined night patrols. Over the following month, the investigation team continued to analyze the scene. But the strange thing was, the tire tracks that led to the container stopped abruptly in the middle of the forest. No turning point, no starting point. They simply began in thin air, as if the truck had just appeared there, then moved a few meters and stopped. When they tried to airlift the truck with a helicopter, the cables snapped 3 times for unknown reasons. Finally, they gave up, and local authorities declared the area off-limits. Weeks later, a group of YouTubers tried to sneak into the zone to film the site. They never returned. Their phones were found 3 miles away, dead with no battery. But their cameras captured final footage, with the sound of tires grinding on gravel echoing through the dark forest. At Ravenmoor Pass, people still hear engine noises at night. Though the road is blocked and no one dares to pass, some swear they hear the blaring horn of a container truck echoing through the fog. The truck has been found, but Ethan hasn't. And sometimes, finding the truck is just the beginning of something far stranger. Early the next morning, after Ethan's truck was found impossibly lodged between 2 massive boulders, the investigation team returned to the scene. The fog had rolled back over Ravenmoor Pass. The cold was biting, not just from the temperature, but as if something unseen was lurking, softly brushing against their skin. Inside the truck cabin, Ethan's phone was still plugged in and charging. The screen lit up when Inspector Lydia Monroe carefully picked it up. In the video folder, they found a clipped footage only 43 seconds long. They all froze, watching in silence. The screen flickered with static and noise. The camera angle was tilted, revealing Ethan driving through the thick fog. His hoarse voice trembled as he whispered, "I see her, right there in the road." Suddenly, the camera blurred and shook violently. A figure in a white dress appeared in the headlights, her face indistinct, blurred beyond recognition. Then, piercing through the silence came a chilling, high-pitched screech, like metal clawing against stone, sharp and terrifying. The video abruptly cut off. Frightened, the search team moved to a nearby camp to spend the night. While the group took turns keeping watch, a rescue worker named Marcus suddenly vanished. They called out for him, searched the woods, tracked his GPS, but there was no trace. The next morning, when Monroe's team returned to the truck to continue their analysis, they stopped dead in horror. Marcus's rescue watch was placed neatly on the steering wheel. The way it was positioned was precise and deliberate, as if someone had quietly come back to set it there. The cabin was still locked, with no signs of forced entry. For the first time in her career, Monroe's hands shook as she sent her report. "We're not just searching for a missing person. Something here is watching us." The search and rescue operations around Ravenmoor Pass had been officially suspended after the disappearance of Jackson Harper, the volunteer who vanished during the third night of the investigation. His rescue watch, eerily ticking in perfect sync with the truck's dashboard clock, had shattered whatever confidence the team had left. With no sign of Jackson, no body, and no plausible explanation for the events surrounding Ethan Cole's final route, the authorities stepped back. But the locals, those who had lived in the shadow of the pass for generations, began murmuring again. Whispers of old stories, long buried under asphalt and time, began rising to the surface like bones in thawing ground. Among those murmurs was the name Alma McRee. Alma was a recluse in her 70s, living alone in a creaky blue cottage just off the winding mountain trail that skirted the edge of Ravenmoor Pass. She was known by the townsfolk as a bit of an oddity, a woman who talked to crows and kept mirrors covered in thick velvet cloths. Most avoided her. Some pitied her. But a few, those who still remembered the old stories, feared her. Detective Callahan, who had refused to abandon the investigation even after the department pulled back, knocked on her door one fog-drenched evening. She answered as if she had been expecting him. "You're not the first to come ask about the pass," she said, her voice papery and sharp. "And you won't be the last. Come in." Inside, her home smelled of dried herbs and old wood. A fireplace crackled gently in the corner, casting long, distorted shadows over the furniture. She motioned for Callahan to sit and handed him a chipped porcelain cup filled with bitter tea. "It's not a place you lose your way in," Alma said, settling into her armchair with the weight of 1,000 memories. "It's a place that chooses." Callahan leaned forward. "Chooses what?" "Sacrifice." She spoke of a tragedy from over 4 decades ago, a wedding party that had traveled up the pass in a chartered bus. It was late October, and the fog had rolled in unusually thick that year. The bride, a young woman named Lila Granger, was said to be from one of the wealthiest families in the county. The bus never reached its destination. It skidded off a bend near the highest ridge of the pass and plummeted into the ravine. No survivors. Not even a body recovered. The bus was swallowed by the forest like a stone into a deep well. But days later, a park ranger found something strange. A bouquet of wilted white roses placed carefully on a trailhead signpost near the crash site. Roses that had not been native to that area. "They say she's still looking for someone to take her place," Alma whispered, eyes glinting in the firelight. "The bride, Lila, trapped between this world and the next. She wanders that fog-choked stretch of road, trying to drag others into her ghostly procession." Callahan was silent. "It happens the same night every year," she added. "When the crescent moon rises after Halloween. The air goes still, the fog never lifts, and someone vanishes. Just one, always one, and they're never seen again." "Why hasn't anyone stopped it?" he asked. Alma chuckled darkly. "You think you can stop what doesn't belong to this world? Ravenmoor Pass doesn't bend to reason. It remembers. It mourns. It collects." Later that night, Callahan returned to his motel room with Alma's words echoing in his head. He pulled up the date of Ethan's disappearance. November 3rd, the first crescent moon after Halloween. His hands trembled. Looking through archived police reports and local news clippings, he found more than he expected. Each year, there was a missing person report filed within a few days of that same lunar event. A hiker, a tourist, a motorist, a maintenance worker. No bodies, no traces. Just the same eerie conditions: dense fog, sudden isolation, inexplicable mechanical failures, and in one case, a dash cam that cut off with the sound of screaming brakes and a shadow in white. The Ravenmoor Curse, they called it in some circles. Back in the woods near the site of the truck, the rescue team had quietly left behind a trail camera before abandoning their post. The battery was supposed to last 3 months. When Callahan checked it, he found only one recording. Timestamp, November 3rd, 2:16 a.m. The footage was barely a minute long. A thick fog swirled unnaturally across the trees, despite calm weather reports. And then, for a moment, just a single frame, a figure in white appeared. A long dress, veil drifting in an unseen wind. Her face, just a blur. But it was the position of her hand that made Callahan's blood run cold. She was pointing directly at the camera, and behind her in the mist, the outline of a second figure could be seen. A man in a rescue uniform, Jackson Harper. The next frame was static, and then, nothing. After days of tense and astonishing investigation, the search team decided to return one last time to the site to retrieve the truck from the deep ravine. They brought heavy equipment, machinery, and a team of skilled rescuers, all mentally prepared to face the unimaginable after Ethan Cole's mysterious disappearance. When they arrived, the area was still shrouded in thick fog, cold and silent as if time itself had stopped. All eyes fixed on the tire tracks leading to the cliff, the last place the truck was seen. But what they saw sent chills down everyone's spines. The truck had completely vanished, leaving no trace on the ground or in the ravine below, as if it had never existed. Only one thing remained: the old, shiny dashboard clock, lying still on the road, right in the middle of the tire tracks like a cold, final verdict. The clock was still ticking, the second hand moving steadily, showing the exact time as if someone was still sitting behind the wheel, controlling time itself. The battery was intact, showing no signs of draining despite days spent deep in the forest. The atmosphere among the team grew suffocating. No one dared to touch the clock, fearing it was a sign of unknown horrors and supernatural hauntings beyond explanation. One investigator noticed security footage from the construction site captured a fleeting white figure drifting through the thick fog. The figure had no clear face or form, just a faint, glowing blur like a ghost passing through space. When they replayed the video in the monitoring room, everyone fell silent upon hearing the last sound recorded on the internal radio system. It was Ethan Cole's voice. His voice echoed clearly but filled with terror and despair, chilling everyone in the room. "I can't escape. She's coming closer. I can't get away." They exchanged nervous glances, unsure what to believe. Ethan had been missing for over 72 hours, with no sign or confirmation of his fate. So why was his voice still coming through the radio? Who, or what, was responding through the device? Speculation ran rampant. Some believed Ethan was trapped in another dimension where time and space were warped by Ravenmoor Pass's curse. Others thought the white figure was the spirit of the bride from local legend, endlessly roaming in search of lost souls to trap forever. The clock kept ticking, marking a story with no end. No matter how far the team searched, Ethan Cole and the truck vanished forever, leaving an unsolvable mystery in local history. Ravenmoor Pass continued to spread terror every nightfall, and footsteps echoed in the mist, never fading away.